Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Rich Reviews. I hope you're enjoying your week. So, the latest in films that didn't get wide release theaters but have found their way onto the internet. The latest of these is an HBO documentary, so this obviously didn't go to the theaters, obviously. And it premiered this past Monday on HBO, as I said. And this is the third from HBO documentaries that they've done this past year. They did a HBO documentary on John McCain, which I didn't see. They also made a film about Andre the Giant, which I did see, but I didn't think was all that great. So this basically encompasses the life and career of Robin Williams and his impact on popular culture at large. Now this covers a lot in 2 hours. Well, apparently there's like a 4-hour documentary on Gary Shandling, which I'd never seen. So apparently if you've seen that, congratulations. Again, he was born, raised largely in Detroit because his father worked for an automotive company. And he was always on the road. He had a lot of time to himself. His mother was a funny one. Yes, he had 2 half-siblings, one from his father, one from his mother, and I guess his maternal half-brother is interviewed here, and he basically said, yeah, I was raised by my grandparents, more or less, and he didn't really meet Robin until many years later, although they did kind of grow up to be close in later years. And when asked about, hey, how does it feel to have Robin Williams as your brother, he says, well, I certainly don't advertise it. I always wondered to myself, what would it be like to be knowing your sibling is famous and you're not, and you try to shun the limelight to a certain degree, because most of the times when I see siblings or celebrity siblings, the end result is, maybe the Kardashians. Robin Williams, he goes to an all-male college thing that has females at all, is a theater company apparently it goes to. Then he goes to a smaller community college where his parents live in San Francisco. He goes to Juilliard. Now apparently in his class, the following people were also in Robin Williams' 6th class, which happens to be William Hurt, Mandy Patinkin, and Christopher Reeve. He was also one of 2 people that accepted to John Houseman's advanced class, and that person was also being Christopher Reeve. You think to yourself, wow, how can I compete with this? Considering you got William Hurt and Mandy Patinkin and Christopher Reeve, it's like, wow, that is a stacked class. How would you feel if you were there knowing that, wow, one of these persons is going to be in Homeland, another person is going to be Superman, another person is going to be one of the greatest comics of recent memory. Isn't that fascinating? And Reeve obviously in later years commented that he was always on. Robin Williams comes from a comedy of thought that makes you always need to see make you sweat. People were talking here, they always say what Robin Williams is done doing his act, of course, is that he's always physically, mentally, and he was just exhausted afterwards. After Juilliard, he goes on a comedy circuit. Now all the comedians from the 90s or 80s and 90s, some of them went on to great success, and every time one of those comics ran into Robin Williams, he said, well, why don't I just go home? Because quite frankly, I cannot compete with this. And eventually, he's discovered, and he gets spots on Happy Days as Mork, and then that leads to greater success for him as they go on to have Mork and Mindy. The person who was Mindy is interviewed here. Now, obviously, there is some outtake footage, there is some rare footage that you don't really see here from other stuff that Robin Williams has done. So by the time that Mork and Mindy, the 2nd season had come, Williams had been hooked on the nightlife. He also got hooked on cocaine. Also in voiceover narration, he admits he had a serious addiction, and how, frankly, he was there the night John Belushi died, and how Belushi was just strung out, and how, hey, look, he freely cooperated with the grand jury and investigators. His first marriage, like all marriages, sort of ends because the wife just says, hey, look, we're just 2 separate people doing 2 totally separate things. He was taking off, I wanted to stay home, and of course he does end up marrying sort of the babysitter, but the first wife just sort of says, hey, look, I don't care, he fell in love with the babysitter. And I guess the tabloids exploited that. In life, of course, Robin Williams developed an alcohol problem that he kicked eventually. He divorced his 2nd wife, his 3rd wife, before passing away like a year or 2 later. And his son, who was interviewed here, basically says, oh yeah, we saw him maybe half the time of the year, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what he was working on. Now, as I said previously, we do get some incredibly rare, unforeseen footage, particularly outtakes of Mork and Mindy where, yes, Robbins is clearly on drugs. We also see some material here from Awakenings in which he is interviewing, or Robin is talking to, a Tourette's syndrome patient. Or we see one footage of him on Sesame Street talking to Elmo, which quite frankly is a barrel of laughs. We also see some outtake footage of Mrs. Doubtfire, a film that I don't really particularly care for. I think what you get obviously here with the Robin Williams documentary here is the portrait of a life. How, and quite frankly, Robin Williams is the rare type of comedian in which he is always on. Very rarely when a comedian is always on, you very rarely get access to his inner thoughts. Andy Kaufman or maybe even Charlie Chaplin, you never really understand what they're thinking, and how, quite frankly, he just was comfortable on stage or comfortable in front of a camera, not necessarily always off a camera. In the immediate moments of this film, he's performing on inside the actor's studio, and that's normally a show in which they tell you about your craft. What I'm going to say here about Robin Williams' Come Inside My Mind is that you get a very fascinating portrait. It isn't overly mawkish or sentimental, it just tells you the facts as they are, and it doesn't compromise on the fact that, yes, he was an alcoholic, he was a drug addict for a while. Now, some of those films he wasn't particularly thrilled with, particularly Popeye. I'm going to say here, folks, Robin Williams' Come Inside My Mind is a leave work early type of thing. It's currently out on HBO. I would highly recommend you see this, because if you're a fan of Robin Williams, if you're a fan of, or you want to learn about the art of improvisation, go with that. So, folks, Robin Williams, Come Inside My Mind. Have you seen this? What did you think about it? What's your favorite Robin Williams film? What's your least favorite Robin Williams film? What's your favorite HBO documentary in general? As always, folks, like, comment, subscribe, enrich yourself with knowledge. I'll see you next time, folks. Yes,